It is a mistake to read a parable as though it's an allegory. It's a mistake to think of a parable as setting up an already defined understanding of what it's supposed to mean. An allegory, among other things, says, well, this character represents this virtue, or this situation represents this circumstance in life. In an allegory, your imagination is already prescribed for you. But in a parable, it isn't prescribed. There isn't this equals that, that equals this. It's a mistake to think of a parable in those terms. And yet, when we read this scripture passage about the persistent widow and the uncaring judge, we think to ourselves, well, there's a story here, and it has a judge in it. Jesus is telling a story about a judge. So you know what? God must be the judge. God must be the judge in this story. And then we see, well, there's a widow in this story, someone who is having a difficult time, someone who has opponents who are giving them a difficult time. That must be me. Jesus must be telling a story about me. I'm the person who's in need and life's not treating fairly. Okay? But then you pause for a moment and you think, well, this judge, it says, Jesus is saying the judge doesn't really care about people. That doesn't sound like God. And then Jesus says the judge doesn't even fear God, has no time for God. Okay, well that seems to be contrary to God. And so, well, maybe the judge in the story isn't God. Well, then how am I supposed to read this parable now that way? And then you get to thinking, and you realize, if the judge isn't God, I wonder if I'm misinterpreting who is the widow. This is a parable about someone who's really persistent in prayer, and if I stop and I admit it to myself, I don't really persist in prayer. I have it pretty good, and all of that equivalency starts to fall apart. You know what? Maybe when I read this passage, I shouldn't put myself in the role of the oppressed person who needs justice. And if that's the case, then I got to ask myself, how am I supposed to read this? Well, at the start of the parable, it says, then Jesus told them a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. And if you're going to teach somebody something, the best way to do it is to have some exemplar. Somebody who really is good at doing the thing that you want someone to learn. And if this is a parable about learning how to persist in prayer, well, who is an exemplar for that? What is prayer? What is the definition of prayer? I'm not exactly sure, but it seems to me that prayer is about this conversation between myself and God. Prayer is this ongoing conversation. If it's persistent, prayer is about these two in conversation, God and myself, or you and God. And if I ask myself, of those two people, who would be an exemplar of prayer, of keeping the conversation going? It isn't me. It isn't you. It's God. God is the exemplar of prayer. God's the one who's always keeping the conversation going, even if we are not into it. Even if I am too busy to be talking to you right now, God. So with that in mind, is God the widow? Is the widow like God? Yeah, God's the one who is continually having to reach out and bug someone who just won't give God the time of day. And who is that? It's me. It's you. And when we realize, okay, well, if the widow kind of represents God, then who's the judge? Oh no, that's me. I'm the person who could learn a little bit about care. I'm the person who thinks I'm just way too busy for this conversation. You and your need for justice, don't bug me. And so we can go back and we can read this parable and say, here is a parable about persisting in prayer. It's kind of like God continually coming to us, and despite our just not caring, God just keeps coming and going, I'm still here. Listen to me. No, I got better things to do. Not now. I'm too busy. God just keeps coming back. I'm still here. I need justice. I need you to respond to my call. When we think about prayer and its persistence, God never stops and God never gives up on us. For a while, the judge refused, and then the judge said, "Yeah, because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice, so that she may not wear me out by continually coming." That's how the judge is responding to this person in need of a hearing. If you're catching the nuances of the story, the widow reaches out to the judge and says, "Will you listen to what I've got to complain about?" And the judge says, "No, I'm not going to listen to what you have to complain about. I'm too busy." "Will you listen to me?" "No, I'm too busy." And because the widow keeps coming back, finally the judge says, "I'm just going to give this widow whatever she wants." And here's the part I want you to catch. It doesn't say that the judge eventually heard her case. It doesn't say that the judge eventually listened to her case. The judge just said, "Okay, this is what she needs probably, just so she can get off of my back." This is an important part of the text. That's how we are with God sometimes, maybe more often than not. God comes to us and says, "I'm here. There's something I want to tell you. I'm here. I want to call you to something. I want you to listen to my call." And we start out with, I'm too busy. Don't bug me. And God persists. "I'm still here. I'm still calling. Can we have a conversation? Will you listen to me speaking in your heart?" And after a while, we're like, "Oh my gosh, enough already. What does God want from me? I'll just do it. We'll put the money in the collection plate. We'll do the things we think are dutiful without ever stopping to have the conversation, without ever stopping to do the listening." Imagine this. Your teenage daughter comes to you. She's in high school, early high school. She comes to you and she's crying. And in her tears, she's saying, my friends don't want to hang out with me. I just found out that they're all going to the movies and they didn't bother to invite me." But as a parent, you're just too busy. And in response to these tears, you pull out your wallet and you pull out $20 and you say, "Here, go to the movies." Have you solved the problem? No, because you haven't stopped to listen to the tears. Just jumping to the end to, okay, well, what does the situation need so that it'll go away, short circuits the conversation.